Okay, so I'm back with Brian Tyler Cohen. And, look, my brother is Brian Cohen, spelled differently. He spells it with a Y. But it's nice talking to you, Brian. It's been a while. I want to jump.
Good talking to you, too.
Yeah, the same. It's been a while, my brother. So, well, not really my brother, but my brother anyway.
Yeah.
So I want to.
I've gotten more emails than I could possibly explain, asking the ways in which we're related. So it's all good. It's by association. There, we'll just
there you go. So let me start by asking. You have 3 million YouTube subscribers and over 2.5 billion views. I mean, you've built an incredibly influential platform. What do you think has been the key to resonating with such a large and an engaged audience, particularly in a highly competitive media landscape? I mean, you've really done great.
I think, honestly, a big key to building the audience that I've built is just that there was a hunger for progressive content. There was such a dearth in progressive content in YouTube when I first started back in 2019. That is why I started making political content in the first place, because I would go on to Facebook and YouTube, and back then Facebook was basically the principal platform that people would get their news from, and all I would get was served right-wing content over and over and over, and there was no way to even train your algorithm to give you left-wing content or progressive content or even neutral content, because it wasn't even on the platform. And so I just started making my content, progressive content, on a consistent basis, and the followers came, but then there were a bunch of tricks that I had to learn for myself in terms of you have to be consistent, you have to be honest. I mean, our currency is trust, and so I don't have the luxury of being able to hide behind a news network, for example, if I screw up. So I had to make sure that, and there would be screw ups over the years, but I had to make sure that I was as honest as possible, because once you lose people's trust, it's hard to gain that back.
Yeah, because I started my YouTube channel exactly 36 days ago today, and I have about 135,000 subscribers in 36 days. And
well, you got there a lot quicker than I did.
And it's funny, I'm still waiting for my silver plaque. As I'm on my journey to at least 1 million, subscribers. But I find it's much more difficult than I thought it was going to be, simply because I have the other platforms as well. I hear you. Every day I'm posting on the Michael Cohen Show. And with me, like with this podcast, that we've done over 400 plus million downloads since I started, I got to tell you, keeping up with the content is difficult. It really is. So my question to you is, how do you balance creating content that's both informative and engaging? Because you really do have to be engaging, but at the same time maintaining the integrity of your progressive values.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of, first of all, balancing all of this stuff is a struggle. I mean, for a long time, I worked alone. For years, I worked alone, and I just recently started expanding my team and giving myself some help. So that was the first thing, was just teaching myself as a human being that it's okay to delegate. And that's been really helpful, just having some support. But I think, look, there has to be, people are going to be able to see the authenticity. Mm-hmm. If you look just to have like that link to what's happening in politics today, you can see people like J.D. Vance are total phonies and frauds. You can see someone like Donald Trump is a total fraud. When we create our content, it's going to be obvious through the content that we're making and what we're saying, and for people getting to know who we are, whether we're being true to, our values, whether we're being honest in the content that we're creating, or whether, it's whether you're just being phony. And so that's going to shine through. And I think the more that you can keep on to that authenticity, the more it's going to show.
Yeah. So let's just stay with YouTube for a second, because your YouTube channel has really become, and I say this with a slight touch of jealousy here, but I'm extremely impressed. It's really a go-to source for progressive commentary. And there's not a lot of progressive commentary. It's like even this podcast, you start to see the right-wing media ecosphere, that they really sort of dominate for whatever the reason is. Republicans, and especially the ultra-conservative, they seem to have so many people, maybe because they don't work or they don't do shit, that they just have all day long to listen to these podcasts. But the real question I want to ask you is, how do you see the role of independent creator like yourself in shaping public opinion comparing that to the traditional media outlets that so many of us have become not just disenchanted with, but like nauseated by?
Yeah, it's a great question. The first part of your question, which was about the proliferation of right-wingers on this site and every site, look, the right has done a really good job at embracing independent media. And the reason for that is because they knew that the mainstream media wouldn't be anything close to an adequate partner for them. And so immediately they knew that they had to go to AM radio for the days of Rush Limbaugh. They had to start embracing the Daily Wire, the Daily Caller, all of these alternative outlets because they wanted to get their message across. I even write in my book, which I know we're going to speak about in a little while, about the Ailes memo. And Roger Ailes saw what happened to Richard Nixon in 1974 and recognized that there was no support for a president like that. And so that's why he was forced to resign. And of course, the natural conclusion of that is looking at somebody like Donald Trump today, who has plenty of support. And so far from being excommunicated from his party, he's actually been embraced and is now again the Republican nominee for president. So that's the difference in the right-wing media ecosystem. And so I think that's been especially important for them. That's been especially important for them in terms of building up this independent media, infrastructure. And the left is at a disadvantage because a lot of people on the left view the mainstream media as our voice. And in fact, it's not our voice. And they bend over backwards to prove that they're not the liberal media. But for so long, we all viewed that as adequate. And so we never invested enough time and energy and resources into building up independent media until now, until we're recognizing the importance that it's going to have as people have declining trust in mainstream media. And mainstream media is just losing eyeballs because people are cutting the cord, because people get their news more from the internet. And so now, at this point, it's a mad dash to continue to build up our independent media infrastructure. And the onus is not just on us to do it. It's on politicians, for example, to embrace it on the left, the same way that the right-wing politicians have embraced it. I mean, to Trump's credit, he was very good at embracing right-wing media figures, as fringe as they were, but he would put arms around them and confer a degree of legitimacy onto these people that I think that our thought leaders on the left should do as well, so that we can be able to compete, because this right here, the independent media space, is the next frontier of media.
Yeah. You see, for me, when I first started Mea Culpa, I did it while I was on home confinement. I did it so that I can actually build a community of like-minded people that are concerned about the Constitution of the United States, to be concerned about a guy who's sitting at the highest level in America, who is inherently an authoritarian, that had no qualms about unconstitutionally remanding a United States citizen, meaning myself, making me the first political prisoner held by my own country because I wouldn't waive my First Amendment constitutional right, that I wouldn't agree not to publish my first book, Disloyal, and so on. And with that, I want to ask you, because again, for me, including not just Mea Culpa, but my YouTube channel, The Michael Cohen Show, or when I go on my TikTok channel, I do it in order to build a community. You have a massive fucking reach. Massive. All right. And you should be really proud of that. But the question I really want to ask you is, do you feel a responsibility to use your platform not only to inform the public, but also to mobilize your audience? Because one of the things that I want to do, not just with my Mea Culpa and with Ben Meiselas of MeidasTouch, I have a second podcast called Political Beatdown. We call them our brigaders. I want to have like a massive march in DC. Bring everybody together from all of the MeidasTouch platforms, people like yourself on, the Brian Tyler Cohen podcasts and shows. And I want to bring Lincoln Project and Seneca Project. I want to bring everybody together. Why? In order to show the right that we're bigger than you, we're smarter than you, and we're stronger than you. And I want to do this, believe it or not, before the November election.
I think that we have not only I think that we not only should do that, we have an obligation to make sure that we include activism in what we do. I mean, that is a central part of what I do. We have this rare opportunity right now where we are able to reach a ton of people. And so to just use that solely to inform, which, don't get me wrong, is absolutely important, and I think in large part why the progressive media ecosystem has taken off the way it has, just by virtue of people needing this information. But also, look, I've said it before, and I will maintain this. I am not a journalist. I'm an activist. And so that doesn't mean that I can't be honest, because I have an obligation to be honest to people, and they can see through that. And I will get called out if I'm not. But we also have an opportunity in protecting democracy to actively protect democracy. And right now we have one party that's seeking to tear it down. So if we're not using our voice and our platform right now to try to elicit some change and make sure that people know that they should be registered and how they should be registered, and that they're not going out and finding people in their circles to get them registered, if we're not using our voices for activism at the same time, then we're dropping the ball in terms of this moment that we have here and the audience that we're able to reach.
Yep, I listen. I agree with you. It's why I started, and it's why I do. It's exactly why I do this. Look, everybody says to me, "You're a schmuck, Michael." What you should have done is you should have kept your mouth shut. You should have done your time, right, and stay on side with Donald Trump, because if you did, you'd probably be working at the RNC alongside with Lara Trump, which would have made me vomit every day. You'd probably
you want to listen to her new album on repeat?
Jesus.
That didn't seem too appealing to you?
Oh, God.
Also, by the way, for anybody that says you should have stayed among like the lawyer class on the Republican Party, how many of them have been disbarred at this point?
Right.
How many of them have been imprisoned incarcerated at this point? It's not like that's like some meal ticket. Yeah. If you're a lawyer in the Trump orbit, No,
but what they do is they put you with the RNC, because of my my voice and because of my ability within which to be raw and unfiltered. Chances are I'd be on Newsmax, OAN, or Fox News. The same way like Kayleigh McEnany, ended up with a show, or totally. Or Jason Miller, or whoever the hell. I mean, no. I value the Constitution. I value our rights, and I value America, which gave my family the ability to come here. My father, a Holocaust survivor, gave him the opportunity to come to this country, all right, and to succeed and to have children here. And even though we were 4 lawyers, now 3 lawyers and a felon, right? I still know my father and my mom are very, proud of this country. And the fact that Donald Trump is tearing down this country, as you said, and making us, I think we all have this massive obligation, if you have the voice to do so. And that brings me to the segue into your book, Shameless. And in your book, Shameless, you discuss the erosion of political norms that has led to the current state of American politics. So the question I really want to ask you, Brian, is how do you see this playing out in the current political environment, especially with the Harris-Walz campaign gaining massive momentum against a backdrop of disinformation, malinformation, misinformation, and division?
I mean, that is the strategy, right? And so I think that they're going to continue to ramp it up because they see that the Harris-Walz ticket is promoting a sense of optimism and hope, and that is a lot stronger than the fear and demagoguery that's peddled by Republicans, by Trump and J.D. Vance on a daily basis. And so they're going to feel more and more desperate. Their backs are going to be up against the wall. Donald Trump, as you know better than anybody, when he gets put up against the wall, is going to lash out unlike ever before. And so we're going to see the misinformation and the disinformation ramp up to a degree that we haven't seen before. And they'll figure out how they're going to do it. You can see already Donald Trump getting desperate and figuring out how he's going to how he's going to grab back eyeballs from the American people because now his whole shtick is tired, right? And so, and more people are showing up to Kamala Harris's rallies, and more people are donating to their campaign, more people are signing up to volunteer. And so the energy and the momentum is clearly only on one side. And so Trump is figuring out ways where he can claw back some attention. And thus far, he's failed at actually helping himself do that, even though he is getting eyeballs now. I mean, he does his show with Elon Musk, where he trashes unions. He does the National Association of Black Journalists, where he denies the biraciality of Kamala Harris. He does the Mar-a-Lago press conference, where he brags about this idea that his January 6th insurrection crowd was bigger than Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech crowd. So he's figuring out ways to claw back some attention right now out of desperation, and he's going to ramp that up to a 10 because, I mean, you'd be able to speak to this better than anybody, but when he feels desperate, that's when he will seek to get more and more extreme.
But there's absolutely no positivity in anything that he's doing.
Correct, but that's all he knows.
Right.
But that's all he knows. When all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Donald Trump only knows how to do negativity and fear porn and demagoguery.
Yeah, so here, let's just use, for example, the Elon Musk interview. A total fucking nothing burger at all.
Right.
And then you turn around and you see, what got the most attention over the course of the last 10 days or so in the, we'll call it Trump Vance, right? Or the Von Schitzenpants Shady Vance ticket. It's Shady Vance, or I should call him Lady Vance's drag queen photos when he was at Yale Law School. That got more eyeballs than anything. But that's not the positive eyeballs that's going to bring people or voters to your campaign. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, they brought in now over $350 million. Actually, I think the number's more like 311 over just the month of July. They brought in over 200,000 volunteers. That's sick numbers. That is absolutely sick numbers for a period of 1 month. Trump needs to reverse this somehow. And I don't see it happening, not with the upcoming Chicago convention that both you and I are going to be at. That helps to give the party, the DNC, a major boost, where all the momentum is already with Harris Walz. So then after that, you have the debate, the September 4th, I believe, the debate between Trump and Harris on Fox News. And that's going to be a shit show. In fact, here's a prediction, Brian. I think after that September 4th debate, I don't think he does the other two as promised. I'm telling you, I think that it's
it's a good prediction.
Yeah, I think it's a ploy on his behalf. But I find it very, very interesting that the biggest eyeball getter so far has been the leaked photos of Lady Vance.
Yeah, I think that's just a testament to, look, the rank hypocrisy on the right, where they will attack people for living however they want to live, and yet, there is, and look, it's not a big deal, and nobody's against anybody dressing however they want to dress. It's just the hypocrisy of somebody who decides that he has the right to dictate how other people live.
I got to stop you for a second. That's not true. All right, the entire right-wing evangelical ecosphere, they have a problem with people.
Oh, of course. I'm just saying from our side, like on the left, nobody on the left actually cares if JD Vance dresses up however he wants to dress up. What our beef is with the hypocrisy of somebody like him telling other people how they can and can't live their lives, only to then realize that, it looks like that person lived his life, even in just a moment, even having fun, whatever it was, but that's where the hypocrisy lies.
Yeah. By the way, I don't believe that it was having fun. He looked too comfortable in those photos. No, I'm serious. When I was in my fraternity at ZBT at American University, I remember we made pledges wear their girlfriend's dress one night or one afternoon and go to class. All of them wearing dresses and high heels. Yeah. It was fucking funny. All right. And it really was. And of course, there are photos of them out there, but they're fraternity pranks. There's no fraternity prank when you're in Yale Law School. It's not as right. I mean, that shit doesn't happen. So I would love to ask, and I hope Tim Walz brings this out during the vice presidential debate, as you are the biggest hypocrite, and talk about things like trying to discuss how other people should live their lives when you clearly, have your own specific set of rules that only apply to you.
Right. I mean, look, this is the guy who's the running mate of somebody who he himself called America's Hitler. This is the guy who has done apologia for Donald Trump's denial of Kamala Harris's biraciality while he himself has 3 biracial kids. I think the ship has sailed in terms of JD Vance showing us that he's fine being a hypocrite.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me go back to Shameless for a second and ask you a question a lot of people asked me with my 2 books. What do you hope that readers take away from Shameless about combating disinformation and media manipulation in an era where traditional journalism is under constant attack? And the constant attack is by the head of one of the 2 political parties in our country.
The reason that I wrote it initially, and it morphed into something bigger, but the reason I wrote it initially.
So what is Lumen? Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or you're burning carbs. And it gives you a tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, your workouts, your sleep, something I need badly, and even stress management. So let me tell you how Lumen works. All you have to do is you breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fat or carbs. And then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on the measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after your workouts and your meals so that you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. So here's what Lumen does. Lumen provides crucial insights and helpful guidance for your lifestyle. It requires effort though, and it also requires a lifestyle change to achieve results. Let me be clear, Lumen is not just a weight loss tool. It's about understanding and improving your metabolic health. So let me also tell you why metabolic health matters. It matters because your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food that you eat into fuel that keeps you going. Because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimum metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, and better sleep. Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health. It can also track your cycle as well as the onset of menopause and adjust your recommendations to keep your metabolism healthy through hormonal shifts so that you can keep up your energy and stave off cravings. So if you want to take the next step to improving your health, go right now to lumen.me/Cohen to get 15% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/Cohen for 15% off your purchase. And thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode.
Is that we are heading toward another election cycle where, yet again, we're already seeing polling showing that Republicans are more trusted on the economy, they're more trusted on national security, they're more trusted to be the pro-family values party. And they enjoy all of this branding, pro-Constitution, the party of family values, of fiscal responsibility, of states' rights, of the military. They enjoy all this branding, but they actually don't behave in a way that bolsters any of that branding. Their behavior suggests a complete denial of all of that branding. And so my goal here was to expose who the Republican Party actually is. Not the Republican Party with the glossy veneer of like the Reagan days, but who the Republican Party is today. And in fact, all of their behavior is completely antithetical to that branding. And then beyond that, how the media, in large part, has helped them perpetuate this farce by conferring all of these these benefits onto them, giving them the benefit of the doubt, pretending that in fact they're still good on the economy, and failing to question them adequately when the facts are don't support that thesis whatsoever. So that's why I wrote the book. That's what I hoped to do by virtue of putting Shameless together.
Because that's really kind of the theme of your book, right? It's exposing also, amongst other things, media's role in either enabling or promoting or propagating the lies and the conspiracy theories by figures like Donald Trump. I mean, that's really kind of like the main theme, the way I took it from the book. And I'm sort of, the question I really want to get out of you there is then, what's the path forward? What does it even look like for the media to regain public trust?
Great question. I think at this point, there are two things that has to happen with regards to the media. The first is that we have to lose this both sidesism that pervades the entire mainstream media ecosystem. This both sidesism is what is killing the media, where they feel like they have to equate everything that the Republicans do with everything that the Democrats do. And so Donald Trump can incite an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, but now the Republicans are also saying that there's a Hunter Biden scandal, so we have to give that equal coverage, even though there's no there. Even though the whole thing, for example, was based on some bogus 1023 form where the smoking gun witness was actually a Russian agent who then would go on to be indicted by the FBI. So there is this false equivalency that the media feels like has to happen, because if you talk about Republicans, then you have to talk about Democrats. So long as we have that both sidesism pervading the media, pervading our political coverage, then people will continue to lose trust in the media because they can see through that. They know that we don't have to bend over backwards to give goodwill to a Republican Party that doesn't deserve it. The second thing is that I think it's going to be more and more important to make sure that we bolster independent media, like what you're doing, like what I'm doing, like what your our friends are doing at MeidasTouch, and on and on. And I think that's going to be especially important too in terms of regaining trust from Americans right now, and making sure that there are sources that people know that they can believe in, know that they can trust moving forward.
Yeah, see, I see it just a tiny bit different than that. I see the media, and I'm talking about the mainstream media and cable news. I see a lot of the, I don't even moderators. Some of them aren't even journalists. And I'm going to use Ari Melber as an example because I like to shit on Ari. He's an asshole anyway. When they're more concerned about their ratings than they are about the truth, when they're more concerned about increasing their own visibility than they are about, again, destroying or debunking lies and conspiracy theories. That's where I have the problem. And I'm referring to, like, for example, when I was a witness, the key witness at the Manhattan District Attorney case. Ari Melber brings on who? Michael Avenatti? Seriously? That motherfucker's time came and went because he is a scumbag extraordinaire. This is a guy who stole money from his clients, including Stormy Daniels. This is a guy who has lied to the American people. He's no different really than Donald. He's a narcissistic sociopath. That's what he is. So he brings him on television via phone from Terminal Island, FCI, Federal Correctional Institution in California, Terminal Island. And he's sitting there and he's talking about how this case has no legs. It's going to be a mistrial. Michael Cohen can't be trusted. He's a liar. He's this. I never took $1 from anyone. I'm the only guy who goes to jail for giving money to somebody, right? For another guy, meaning Donald, to get his mushroom dick pulled by a porn star. I mean, that's what's crazy. And Ari was sitting there shaking his head like the fucking putz that he is, just shaking his head. Yeah, ha, 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 ha. It's really funny. Meanwhile, 9 hours of deliberation, 9 hours after 5-6 weeks, 22 witnesses, 9 hours of deliberation by 12 independent jurors and a guilty conviction on all 34 counts. Do you think that Ari came out and said, I fucked up? All right, I fucked up. I'm an idiot. I brought this schmuck on television who's tried to shit all over Michael, and, it did raise some eyeballs and so on, because they put in the bottom box of the Chiron all afternoon, Michael Avenatti, right? Big shit. The guy's a dirtbag. He's a thief. He's a con man, and so on. Just like Donald. That's where I have a problem. And I think that your book, Shameless, really talks very, very well to figuring out how to combat the media's role in enabling these lies and these conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that it's going to be more and more important right now to do exactly that, because we've seen what the media did in 2016, and right now we're seeing them fail to learn the lessons that they clearly didn't learn back in 2016, again in the 2024 election, in terms of being able to hold Donald Trump himself accountable for the lies that he spews. I mean, recently I've started live streaming Donald Trump's press conferences and making sure to live fact check them. And that's been a big issue with mainstream media, because they'll put on some semblance of the press conference, and some will pull away, some will stop their coverage to cut in. But there is a specific way that you have to cover Donald Trump that I think the media has failed to iterate in terms of how to actually rebut his lies in real time. And so, look, what we do on YouTube is a platform that's way more conducive to being able to do live fact checks while we do live streams, for example. But the onus is absolutely on us, while more people are migrating from mainstream media over to independent media, to know how to navigate this correctly and to learn the lessons from the media's failures in 2016 and moving forward.
So let me ask you this, because this is another question that I think it was Tom Hartman that asked me. He's a great guy. He does all those book reviews.
Yeah.
He asked me if you could add an additional chapter to Shameless based upon recent events. Because I remember, writing mine, the first book, Disloyal, was #1 for me, a New York Times bestseller. But I wrote that while I had a lot of time while I was sitting in Otisville. The second one, I had a lot of time, even though it took me like 11 months to write. When I wrote Revenge, I was on home confinement. But the question I would ask you is, if you could write an additional chapter to Shameless based upon recent events, what would it focus on and why?
That's a great question.
Of course it is.
And one that I haven't been asked.
That's why this podcast is so popular. We ask the tough questions here.
So I think, look, I wrote the book while we were obviously, advocating for Joe Biden to win this election. He was still the president. He was still the candidate in 2024. And I think what I didn't realize at the time, and that I'm seeing now, is the importance that having a degree of hope and optimism play in our politics, just by virtue of, I think what I didn't take into account is that a lot of times people don't want to be so mired in the negativity and cynicism of politics, even if it's fighting for our side. And I think that while I was advocating for fighting for the truth and bolstering independent media and letting people know how important it was to know their own agency and to speak to your circles of people to make sure that they are able to come out and vote, I think that what I didn't realize in terms of messaging for Democrats, and I spoke a lot about that in the book, was that the sense of hope and optimism is actually unto itself a more powerful tool than just the demagoguery and fear porn that's being peddled by Republicans. And so that's an important thing to imbue into our campaigns. And by the way, it's not like we didn't know that already, because you look at Barack Obama's election in 2008, that was the hope election. And there was no Republican candidate. Even John McCain was a good candidate. But there was no Republican who could overcome that. And yes, Donald Trump was able to harness a lot of negativity in 2016, but he was running against Hillary Clinton, who wasn't able to galvanize the left and didn't confer a strong enough sense of hope, or at least one that people actually believed in, because they viewed her as such an establishment figure, as such, just like
A
a
machine.
political,
Yeah.
a machine. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was hard to really capture that hope, but we're seeing it again right now with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And so I'm recognizing that intangible, just the idea of hope, the idea of some optimism, is going to help get Democrats over that hump and put us over the edge in terms of drawing in more people. And that intangible is so important. It's not just fighting for the truth. It's not just having the infrastructure of an independent media ecosystem. It's not just knowing that we have agency and being armed with the facts and being able to go out and talk to our circles of people. That's a lot, and that's a big part of it. But it's also that little bit of just optimism that we should be sprinkling in there, because we are the party of the future. We are the party of progress. We are the party of how to bring more people in, of protecting the future for young people, of making sure that we have expanded healthcare, of making sure that schools are safer for kids and that women have reproductive rights. We are that party where
kids have something to eat. Because you imagine we're talking about this in the United States of America, the greatest superpower in the world, where food is plentiful. You want to eat something, you don't have to go find it and pick it off of a tree, right? You don't have to go a day without eating. And here, what did they want to do? They wanted to expand food for children. No child, breakfast and lunch should ever go hungry. It stops them from thinking. And if you think the right, they're fighting this. They should figure it out on their own. Really? Seriously?
Yeah. So I think that was a big part, is just understanding that hope is a big part of our messaging, that optimism plays a role, and in large part, we wouldn't normally think about this, but vibes are important. Good vibes are important, and that's not one of those tangibles that you would immediately think of. It's not like that's part of our messaging apparatus or arming people with facts, but it is important. We saw it in 2008. We're seeing it again in 2020, and I really do hope that Democrats take that lesson moving forward and recognize that there is a lot of power in hope, and that hope as a political tool is a lot more potent than fear and demagoguery and cynicism.
Yeah, my only concern is I've been a Democrat basically my entire life. And I can tell you, being on the other side and watching as the Republicans, don't forget, I was also made the vice chair of the RNC Finance Committee. I understand the distinction between the way Republicans and Democrats open up their arms and so on. While the Republicans, they're opening up their arms to everyone, so long as that you continue this promotion of misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, divisiveness, and hate, they're still willing to bring you in. The Democratic Party, it is very difficult. They have themselves locked in as a ironclad group, like Robert De Niro with the Circle of Trust and Meet the Fockers. And it's very hard to break in. They don't want to listen to anything. I'll give you an example. So I have a lawsuit against the United States government for my FOIA documents. In those documents, it will show Donald Trump's unconstitutional remand of me. I don't care what anybody says, other than the MAGA maniacs, that 28-30%, that no matter what you do, you will never reach them because they are so embedded into this dumpster cult of Trump. The other 70%, I think, would really care if there are documents that show that Trump was behind the unconstitutional remand, which is what I break down in my book, Revenge. It is confounding to me that we have a Democratic president who can turn around and demand the Department of Justice release what they originally said, that they had no documents. There are 486,000 documents. First, they said there were none. Then we sued, and they were like, oh, yeah, you're right. We found this out. There's 486,000 documents. I promise you, the documents that you want are there. But I want to move on, and I want to ask you this because we talked about it. Trump and Elon Musk, that interview on X.
Yeah.
And given the increasing influence of social media, like your show, my show, MeidasTouch Network, Lincoln Project, and so on. Our goal is to help to shape public opinion. What do you believe are the broader implications of something like Trump and Elon Musk choosing and going on X as their platform for a live interview? Now, forgetting about the fact that it was a total fucking disaster, right? Literally from inception to the end with his slurring and the questions and so on. There's still something that needs to be discussed here.
Yeah, it's a sad commentary on what Twitter has become. There is going to be a proliferation of right-wing billionaires, basically Christo-fascists, who are looking to basically seize our town squares, and we've seen it happen with Twitter right here. There are a lot of platforms that are moving to the right that help right-wingers. Our job is to continue. Look, we're not going to be able to combat that kind of thing. I think at some point it's going to just be like, we're not going to be able to win over Twitter and prevent these right-wing billionaires from buying up platforms, for example. But our job is to just redouble our efforts on the platform.
But for me, this summer has been a scorcher. I mean, I enjoy walking Central Park. And after I do my 4 miles, I gotta be honest, my underwear feels like I just came out of the pool. But now I wear my Tommy John underwear. Let me be clear about this. Tommy John makes me feel fresher, cooler, stylish, drier, and more comfortable overall than other brands of underwear, especially in warm summer temperature. Lightweight, meshy, breathable, cooling fabrics. I mean, you know what that equals. It equals no sweat. Tommy John underwear, it's soft and it's comfortable, and they don't ride up on you, and they keep you really cool, which is the important thing when you're talking about the oppressive heat wave that we're living through. So, not like many of the other brands that I used to wear, Tommy John is different. It's different from the other underwear that I just don't buy anymore. And Tommy John fabrics, they keep you 2 to 3 times cooler, and they dry, get a load of this, 4 to 5 times faster than regular cotton underwear, which is perfect for your summer travel. So shop Tommy John right now for huge summer savings and get 25% off your first order at TommyJohn.com/Cohen. Save 25% at TommyJohn.com/Cohen. Are you listening to what I'm telling you? Shop Tommy John right now for these huge savings. It's 25% off your first order at TommyJohn.com/Cohen. See site for details.
Platforms that we do have a voice on, and that includes Twitter to a degree, by the way, and make sure that even despite their best efforts, that we're still doing, that we're keeping our heads down and doing the work and making sure to inform people where they are. It's a problem. Look, it's like, I'm not going to lie that having somebody like Elon buy a platform like Twitter doesn't make our lives more difficult, doesn't allow for the proliferation of misinformation and disinformation. Elon himself perpetuates disinformation. But I think just the onus is on us to know that this is happening. It's always happened. We've been contending with right-wing assholes for spreading disinformation for a long time, from the days of Rush Limbaugh, and we have it in Fox News, OAN, Newsmax, Dan Bongino's show,
Alex
Steve
Jones,
Bannon's show,
Steve Bannon,
Alex Jones,
Candace Owens.
We've been here before. Our job remains the same. That means that we have to redouble our efforts, grow the progressive media ecosystem, grow the left-of-wing ecosystem, bring more people in, and just make sure that our arguments are more persuasive than theirs, are more effective than theirs. And I think if we're able to do that, then Elon's best efforts to give blue checks to a bunch of like Elon fanboys who are going to spread right-wing lies is only going to be so impactful. I think that at the end of the day, the cream rises to the top. And if we're able to make a more effective and persuasive argument, then that's going to be, more effective in terms of overcoming Elon throwing his money at platforms to help Republicans win elections so that ultimately they can help his bottom line and give him a lower tax rate.
It's funny that you say that because, a lot of the people that are supporting Trump, the uber rich, many are, close to $1 billion, they have $1 billion, or like the Elon Musks with several $100 billion. They're not Christian, nor are they really fascist. They're just opportunists who see Donald as a useful idiot in becoming even richer, despite the fact that they couldn't spend their money in 100 lifetimes. And that's really the truth.
Right.
And they see Donald as a useful idiot in terms of getting what they want, because you're never going to get that from a standard politician. But here's a prediction that I want to make, another one for you. And mark my words on it. And Elon Musk, who is clearly, a very interesting and a very intelligent guy when it comes to sciences and development and so on, he's really an idiot in the fact that he doesn't see what's right underneath his nose. Donald Trump is a jealous dirtbag who, it drives him crazy that he is not the richest guy in the room, let alone when he's comparing himself to somebody like Elon Musk. On the day that Donald Trump becomes president, the first thing that he's going to do, he's going to pull a Mohammed bin Salman. He's going to pull a Vladimir Putin with the oligarchs. He's going to bring them to Mar-a-Lago, and he's going to take Elon Musk's money. And he's going to claim that they fraudulently acquired this money from the United States, right? For example, Elon Musk got what? $7,500 as a credit for EV on each and every one of his vehicles. Trump will say, and he'll have the right to say it, you stole this money from America. I want it. And he'll do what Mohammed bin Salman did. He'll put him on the floor at Mar-a-Lago in his conference room or in his ballroom, and he'll just take their money. And there's nothing, not a fucking thing that any of them could do about it. So while they think that he's the useful idiot, he's using them.
I don't even think we'll get that far, to be perfectly honest. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are going to win this race, so we won't be at a position where Donald Trump is going to take anything.
Well, I agree with you on that. But my point is, if he does, mark my words.
No, I hear you.
Mark my words. Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, John Paulson, right? Lutnick, all of these people that think Trump is an idiot and that, he's going to help them to make even more billions. Nah, he's going to fuck them up just as he's fucked up everybody that has been in this guy's path. So I want to ask you this because...
Right, I mean...
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, yeah. No, I was just going to agree and say that, when you look at the people who Donald Trump has mowed down who've been in his path, everybody from Kayleigh McEnany to Ronna McDaniel Romney...
Rudy Giuliani.
To Giuliani, Gordon Sondland. I mean, the list goes on and on. The people who he's thrown under the bus because they've become politically inconvenient for him.
Yeah. So you brought up something about Elon Musk, and because he's often positioned himself as a free speech absolutist. All right. Yet his platform is regularly and routinely criticized for amplifying disinformation. I mean, it's incredible. They have this massive platform of bullshit, of lies. So how does Musk's amplification of Trump's voice on X align with or contradict his stated principles of free speech and platform neutrality? Because that in and of itself is a lie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually less concerned about his... I don't think it's necessarily a problem that he allows Donald Trump onto the platform. I think that actually does, to a degree, align with his stated, goal of free speech. I think what makes him a hypocrite is, for example, if somebody tries to write the word cisgender or cis on Twitter, then you'll be censored. And so when it's something that Elon Musk is personally against, he'll be perfectly content to censor that. But otherwise, he's fine allowing Nazis and right-wing bigots to spew any kind of language that they want. So I have my qualms with him about that. I actually think that with regard to allowing Donald Trump onto the platform, look, I'm fine to allow him onto the platform. I actually think he hurts himself by virtue of coming onto the platform, because the bigger audience that Donald Trump has, Trump thinks that the answer is always more Trump. And yet that's not the reality of the situation. The more Donald Trump puts himself in front of the American people, the more he reminds everybody of the chaos and the lunacy and the stupidity that surrounds him, that enveloped this nation when he was president. So I'm fine with him coming out in front of the American people, getting a bigger platform, because every time he does that, whether it's the National Association of Black Journalists, whether it's the Mar-a-Lago press conference, whether it's this Twitter space, every time he talks, he just reminds people who may have forgotten, because we have short attention spans, how insane he actually was.
But that insanity is what brought him to the presidency in 2016.
It did, but you know what? This is a tired show at this point.
There was a group of morons that were running the campaign. And it was like Corey Lewandowski when he said, let Trump be Trump. And that's true. Yeah. The more that Trump says stupid shit, the more he does stupid shit, the more he ends up. You now have a group of people, Brian, this is not bullshit. You have a group of people that show up in to his rallies wearing diapers. Because of the allegation that Trump is incontinent and wears diapers. They wear with T-shirts that say, real men wear diapers. That's how fucking crazy this has gotten. You have people showing up with those maxi pads on their left ear or their right ear, as if the same thing that Donald had after he got clipped by some shrapnel from probably the teleprompter. I mean, that's the craziest part. But you know what? But
we're not gonna win over those people, and those people aren't our audience anyway. They're not in the universe of persuadables. And again, to my earlier point, those people don't actually help Trump, because those are the Looney Tunes that push people away. The regular people out there, the independents, the suburban moms, the young people of color aren't going to look at somebody wearing a diaper and think, you know what? I want to be part of that cult. That seems like it's a good group of people for me.
I don't know. I'm kind of like visualizing. Maybe we'll get you to put on one of those diapers at the DNC and walk around and write, "Real men do not wear diapers." Right?
Yeah. Let's see how the Trump cultism works at the DNC.
Yeah, that's for sure. So let me ask you this then: how do we, as progressives and people with a platform, how do we respond to this new axis between technology and Trumpism, especially considering the role of X, which is a massive platform, in spreading disinformation during past elections?
Yeah, look, disinformation is the biggest. It's why I do what I do. I think our job, the onus on us, is to make sure that we're rebutting it quickly and effectively and persuasively. But disinformation isn't going to become less of a problem. It is the biggest problem that we face, at least in the media ecosystem. So it's going to get worse. We have to be prepared for it to get worse. Our job is to make sure that we're building up enough of an audience of people who trust in what we say, so that when this stuff pops up inevitably, that they know to come to us for accurate information, to immediately swat it down, and to not allow a vacuum to be filled that by virtue of our absence of pushback, where this stuff actually sticks. We've seen that happen before, where where Democrats didn't adequately push back, and then that vacuum is just filled with disinformation. It happened with the ACA for Obamacare. Democrats didn't have a strong enough messaging apparatus. Republicans were saying that it was going to be death panels, and we let that lie sit and simmer, and people started to believe it. And look what happened. Democrats were completely routed in 2010 in that election, not in full part, but in large part because of the Republicans' lies about the ACA. And so there's danger in allowing these lies to simmer, but I think our job is to immediately, swiftly, and effectively rebut these lies when they pop up.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, cool. Let's go back for a second to Lady Vance and those leaked pictures of him in drag. All right. As we all know, I mean, Vance and the GOP, they are strong opponents to they're anti-LGBTQ plus, and they have a very strong anti-LGBTQ plus stance. And let me ask you this. Do you think that these leaked images of Vance and drag will impact his credibility amongst the base? Or do you think that they'll just brush it aside as just another distraction? Oh, they come up with answers for everything.
Bingo. That's it. Look, if J.D. Vance's hypocrisy was disqualifying, they wouldn't have nominated him in the first place knowing that he called Donald Trump America's Hitler. If J.D. Vance's hypocrisy was disqualifying, they wouldn't watch him do apologia for Donald Trump attacking the biraciality of Kamala Harris while he himself has 3 biracial children. The hypocrisy doesn't matter for them. They will always explain it away. It never matters. Look, if hypocrisy was disqualifying, Mitch McConnell, when he prevented Merrick Garland from getting a Supreme Court seat, only to then allow Amy Coney Barrett to get one with 8 days before an election, that would have been disqualifying. They will always explain it away. It doesn't matter. There are no scruples. There are no principles, longstanding principles or morals or values. It is about the consolidation of power by any means necessary.
So then how do you see this incident, if any at all, influencing the broader conversation about gender expression within the Republican Party? I mean, particularly as it relates to their, legislative attacks on, for example, drag performances and transgender rights.
It won't. It won't. They're not going to budge their position. Just because they see somebody in drag from their own side is not going to have any impact. There's a cognitive dissonance at play where they will see that and recognize what he's doing, and yet that won't have the slightest bit of impact on their willingness to move forward and continue to impose as great a restriction as they can on the ability of people to express themselves. There is that cognitive dissonance at play, and so it won't matter. It'll have no impact.
Yeah. When we were talking before about, how well Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, the surge and the momentum that they have. I was reading an article the other day about Florida and the fact that Harris and Walz are even doing really well in Florida, which especially Donald thought that he has Florida in the bag. And Florida is an important state, which to me was particularly surprising. So what strategies would you advise the Walz-Harris campaign, or I should say the Harris-Walz campaign, to continue or to change, to help continue to build the momentum that they have right now as we're approaching the election?
I would just say to keep on doing what they're doing, to keep searching for more endorsements. I think that if they can get that Taylor Swift endorsement, that'll have a big impact. But to continue reaching these thought leaders whose audiences include Gen Z, I think that's going to be especially important right now because these people don't necessarily have their political opinions calcified right now. And so in terms of bringing those people into the political process, finding their thought leaders, whether they're in music or TV or art or sports, whatever it is, and making sure that those people serve as tribunes for their audiences so that we can broaden our coalition, expand our tent, that's going to be key heading into November.
Look, Harris and Walz have at least 2 of the top 10 biggest names that are out there as far as celebrity endorsements. Taylor Swift and Queen Bee herself, or Queen Bey, right? Beyonce. She has their endorsement lock, stock, and barrel, and rightfully so. That's certainly part of the momentum. But, I really do believe that the Republicans, especially Donald's constant patting himself on the back, talking about how he is responsible for the overturning of Roe versus Wade and all of the other nonsense that is going on. I really believe that that is what is promoting this massive grassroots mobilization. I mean, when you have 300 or 250,000 new supporters that are coming in and they are out there, knocking on doors for you. Each one just does 10, right? I mean, you're talking about just that alone is over 2.5 million. 2.5 million.
Right.
The entire 2016, the 2020 election was lost by Trump by like 85,000 people. And, there are no Democrats that no matter what are going to switch, especially now there's no Democrats that are switching to Republicans. The independents, I think, are definitively right now leaning much more to Harris and Walz. But I think based on that 30% of never Trumpers, we call them the Nikki Haley voters, that their momentum, that this grassroots mobilization is what is really going to be the ultimate decider here, especially as this mobilization amongst minority communities and younger voters, Gen Zers. That's what I believe is guiding the recent poll surges.
Michael, real quick, I gotta run in like a minute. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to?
I just answer that question, and I have one question left.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think to that exact point, whether it's finding those Gen Z, those young people who aren't yet into the political process, or reaching out to giving a permission structure to those Republicans for Harris, for example, that's going to be especially important right now in terms of, building up this coalition, broadening our tent. The anti-Trump coalition is bigger than anything that Donald Trump has. And so the campaign is very smartly reaching out to these people, giving them a permission structure to come on board. We just saw the Republicans for Harris Zoom happened just yesterday as of this recording. And so, I think giving these different groups a permission structure to come over to this campaign and be part of this coalition is going to be key in November. Yeah.
And just a final question, because the hour goes by very quickly here on Mea Culpa. There's so many things that we talked about, what Shameless really talks about. I was actually hoping when I asked you about what would you do and what would be an additional chapter that you would write about. And the thing I was actually hoping that you would have said, call the chapter Artificial Intelligence. Because one of the things about this AI is that its role in politics, my opinion, is being deliberately weaponized by the Republican Party, by Trumpism, to sow additional distrust in legitimate campaign strategies, especially given the public's growing concerns about technology and privacy. So what do you and I do in order to ensure transparency in usage of technology so that we don't continue to fall into these traps, like the allegations that her rallies are AI generated in terms of crowd size?
It's a great question, and one that's going to become more and more important as that technology continues to advance. I think that our goal is twofold. We need legislation, for example, to prevent this type of manipulation from happening, like legislation that would criminalize the manipulation of I guess images or videos or deep fakes in our election process. So that's the first thing. The second is that we need to make sure that people have better media literacy and can spot this stuff. And that we also, to my earlier point, don't allow this disinformation to simmer without pushing back on it immediately and effectively, and allow them to create that void that will then, be filled with that kind of disinformation where people start to believe it. Yeah. So the onus is on us to move quickly to rebut this kind of stuff, just like it's always on us to move quickly to rebut disinformation so that it doesn't simmer and people start to believe it. But this is definitely going to be a frontier on which Democrats have to fight really effectively, because we've already seen how Republicans are willing to wield it without any scruples.
Yeah. So Brian Tyler Cohen, great to see you again, my brother. We'll be seeing you in Chicago. Congrats on the book. I recommend Shameless. It's fascinating, and I look forward to speaking and seeing you very, very soon. Thanks for joining me again, and thanks for making us just a little bit smarter today.
Michael, thank you so much, and congrats on the explosive growth of your channel. Excited to see where it goes.
Thank you, my brother.